Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for coming back again. It's been a while since I made another lore, but as I said, I thought I was going to continue this series from now on a little bit longer, considering my fascination with Star Wars is this lore and stuff like that. Of course, when I do talk about Star Wars lore, I'll be primarily focusing a lot more on the Legends aspect, far more than the canon aspect, as well, first things first, I don't like canon at all. Well, I did not like the new series, the Disney trilogy is an understatement in this case. I flat out absolutely despise it. Yeah, so basically, no, I won't be, usually don't talk about it, but the new TV series, The Mandalorian, has been really faithful so far to Legends mostly, and a lot of canon story. I'm seeing this tad bit of the potential of Snoke in there, which I am quite disturbed to see. But well, that is still besides the point. However, today our lore is going to be exploring the Mandalorians, coinciding with the TV show that is on right now. Well, a lot of people, of course, know Boba Fett, or Jango Fett, from the prequels and the dream was an original trilogy. These T-visored warriors are, well, extraordinarily famous throughout the Star Wars universe, as well as the fanbase in general. You see these really cool-looking, almost space Spartan-looking warriors doing some really cool armors and, you know, using these extraordinary warrior skills to even fight against the Jedi sometimes. Really, really awesome to see these guys just resurrecting themselves as such a beautiful thing. And Dave Filoni has done an excellent job as well. Not Dave Filoni, as well as the other directors along with him, is doing an excellent job in The Mandalorian, directing how the feel of Mandalorians are being done, their culture as well as their warrior ways is being portrayed so authentically and so well. Thankfully to the Legends, it's just being respectful to the Star Wars lore. The Mandalorians acted like themselves, and they behaved like themselves. That's why I appreciate the the Mandalorian TV show so much when I'm looking at it, and I've been just fanboying it quite a lot. It is a good show, very very good show, and that's why, coinciding with the scenario that Mandalorians have becoming a major prominence because of thanks to the TV show, I thought I'm going to have take a pot shot at making a lore about this as well. So, going at to the description of who the Mandalorians are and what the Mandalorians are. Now, Mandalorians have a very complicated history, extraordinarily so. So, I won't be able to go through everything in here. Today's video is going to be a brief overview of who they are as a people and what they are and what kind of history they have, brief history in Legends. I will be focusing more on Legends because canon doesn't have any. So, going to Legends story. Ironically enough, Mandalorians are not really, beginning off wise, humans. They're most commonly depicted as humans, but they started off from Coruscant, ironically enough, the galactic capital of the current day Empire and the Old Republic. It was really odd because the original species of the Mandalorians were called the Tongue. Nothing like the humans we know. Well, ironically, they were driven off Coruscant by humans, which they became a nomad species. So they floated around the galaxy until they reached Mandalore itself. Then they of course conquered the planet, and this native planet, Mandalore, now known as Mandalore, has these humongous dinosaur-like creatures called the mythosaurs, and these mythosaurs were hunted down and driven extinct by the Tongue. However, because of their tremendous ferocity in battle, they were engraved into the Mandalorian markings, as they are the sign of who the Mandalorians are, and it represents the great martial prowess that these warriors will have. And even until to this day, it represents Mandalore and Mandalorians as a people. It is a great symbol, and it has been generations since this symbol has been used. A few thousand millennia ago, ironically enough now. Now, the Mandalorians, as any aspiring cultures would do, began their expansions relatively kind of simply initially on, adopting the regional people around the area and growing slowly from was it a planetary power to regional powers, system-wide and nearby sector-wide. But of course, as their expansions became more and more aggressive, they of course fought against the Jedi quite often, and it was there was a numerous amount of wars against the Jedi, the Republic, and the Sith. Now, I'm not going to talk about them in details, but the most notable of these are the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders, led by the Mandalorian the Ultimate, the Mandalorian Protectors by Revan, established by the friend of Revan, the Mandalorian, the Protector, as in terms of the Mandalore of that time period. But other than that, it was several stages of Mandalore itself. Now, I'm going to talk about more in recent history because the TV show also focuses a lot more on the post-imperial fractured eras, so I'm going to focus on that especially. Now, one of the wars with the Mandalorians this was quite a few years, a few hundred years ago. One of the wars against the Republic and the Mandalorians kind of led to the complete absolute desolation of the Mandalorian as a planet, which was numerous in terms of greenery. It was a Terran planet, basically. But due to the New Republic's fleet coming in and annihilating it, most of it, through nuclear bombardment, I'm not kidding with this, they do use nuclear bombardments. The Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders preferred nuclear warheads quite well during their conquests. Now, that after the devastation of Mandalore itself, a lot of people came into the city dome things where they would live in these dome-like structures. If you see the Clone Wars, you know what I mean. And they became this force called the pacifists became in power, considering the wars and the warrior tradition of the Mandalore itself was so destructive to the Mandalorians themselves that there was a new kind of movement to resurrect Mandalore as a pacifist nation. Though a lot of people do not like that, of course, obviously, because it was the most they just turned the most hard-ass and badass people into a pacifist. Wow. And a lot of their warriors were exiled from, exiled to Concordia, one of the Mandalorian's moons. And a lot of it was a lot of salt, basically. A lot of salt. But they managed to, resist. Some of the, warrior groups resisted the new Mandalorian way. A lot of and they basically formed a faction group such as the Death Watch, as we know now. They have a little bit of a different, history as from the legends and canons. Well, was it a little bit different, but nothing much. And the Protectors, led by, ironically enough, Jango Fett, and his father, as well as later Protectors made by, ironically enough, Boba in the near future. Yes, these were a lot of the informations. There are also a lot of notions that a lot of these warrior cultures have survived initial pacification programs by the main government in the near countrysides, like the barren wastelands, where these nomad-like people would still retain a lot of their armor and a lot of these warrior cultures that they have. The whole talk about the Protectors, as well as the Mandalorian Super Commandos, will come up in Jango Fett's biography, but please do wait until then. Now, the Imperial occupation, I'm going to be talking about the Legends, not the canon one with the fucking Ezra. I don't like Rebels too much. Though it was a little bit cringe for me. It wasn't as bad, per se, but I really didn't like it as much. So please do take that into mind. Anyways, the Imperial occupation of the Legends of Mandalore was initially quite, soft. Then it became fucking brutal as they started to enslave the populace into what is basically essentially a concentration camps and strip mining Mandalore for its valuable Beskar. Now, obviously, people revolted, and the Mandalorians revolted. And the Civil War was escalated quite ferociously in this case. And the Civil War would have eventually lead to eventual Mandalorian victory after several major battles, and the storyline arc which follows Princess Leia for some reason. Now, the canon version, as I say, if you haven't watched Rebels, I'll give you a brief summary. The occupation of Mandalore was as immediate as if you watch the season 7 of the Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Maul's super commandos were basically repelled. However, as soon as the Republic came into occupation, because there was clone troopers already stationed in Mandalore by that time, the occupation forces tried to integrate local Mandalores into the Imperial sites. So you see the Imperial commandos, super commandos, and there was a large-scale civil war against the Mandalorian who is loyal to Bo-Katan, and the Mandalorians loyal to the Empire. Now, that will be the brief history, and the aftermath of these imperial factors in the Civil War is going to be a little bit more into the afterwards lore. So I'm not going to be talking about it there. I'll be talking more in terms of more briefly in their culture at this point. Now, the Mandalorian cultures were initially very religious, highly war religious, like if you think about it, Mars and stuff like that, Roman kind of Ares and kind of a war mentality where they believed the god of war and the god decay and pacifism. Now they believe it's called Rizonea. I can't really pronounce Mandalorian words, but I will try. Now, this directly translated to 6 actions. Now, these 6 actions were codes developed after the religious fervor has been extinct, but this is the code of conduct that they still believed on throughout these days. These are 6 tenets, basically. How they're to be acted if you are to be a respectable Mandalorian. So, first is wearing the armor of a Mandalorian. Second, speaking of the Mandalorian language. Third, defending oneself along with one's family. Fourth, contributing to the welfare of your clan. Fifth, rallying to the Mandalore when he's summoned. And sixth, raising one's children in the Mandalorian ways. These are the key tenets of the Mandalorian people, and you have to follow these to become what is basically to be a respectable Mandalorian. Now, their society as a whole is very gendered, they don't really, the gender doesn't affect Mandalorians almost to non-existence. As in terms how they, males, of course, are expected to be warriors, and females equally are expected to be as equal warriors to their male counterparts. There are, if you would fight a female Mandalorians, she will whoop your ass. She would whoop your ass right back to where the fuck you came from. They are not fucking kidding with you. Now, men's are usually expected to take care of their sons, son, and they raise them to be a Mandalore, and women's are responsible for raising their daughters to the martial standards of a Mandalorian as per they're expected. Now, when the men is away in warfare, per se, usually the female counterparts would follow if they don't have a family. They'll stay behind. They would raise the children until the age of 8. Now, there's a funny quirk, where if you call a Mandalorian woman, per se, delicate, that's a very common offensive term to call a Mandalorian woman. Now, if you call them delicate, that literally means you're either a poor mother or a poor fighter. And that's a fighting word for a Mandalorian woman. So if you ain't prepared, she's gonna kick your ass and sideways, along with left, right, center, and your skull fracture, and yada yada yada. She's gonna beat your ass quite thoroughly and comprehensively, let me remind you. Now, another thing was that, continuing on the story of family, families were extraordinarily crucial within the Mandalorian society. They were very affectionate towards each other. They valued their family very much, and as well as their clans. And marriage was considered to be very sacred, and it was a long life commitment kind of thing. Divorce was highly discouraged. Ironically, homosexuality has been also involved within the legends as well, where one of the Mandalorian smith called Medrit Vasur and Goran Devin was recorded to be in a relationship, and was it homosexuality is completely acceptable within Mandalorian society. Like I said, like Spartans, it's basically a space Spartans. Now another thing, a very common thing, like you see, this is very close to the TV show as well, but was adoption. Adoptions were extraordinarily common within Mandalorian society. Din Djarin, as you've seen, is a foundling, meaning he was adopted as an orphan, in this case by Death Watch, for him, and subsequently was inducted into one of the cults, the true Mandalorian cults, which was similar to the Neo Crusader, was an era like mentality of the Mandalorians, but I would get into that a little bit more when I talk about the Din Djarin's character a little bit. Now, the act of adoption was so common because, well, if you have to consider Mandalorian culture itself is centered around war. And wars have nasty tendency to have a lot of casualties and a lot of orphans because of it. Thus, it is customary for Mandalorian to just adopt a child and to raise it as his own. That doesn't mean he will not show the same affection that he will to his basically life and blood. He'll change their name into the first name of their clan name, and he will be beloved by their families. Mandalorian families are very, very tight, and their love toward each other is almost to none. Their loyalty to their family and clan is something that is almost extraordinary. It is very, very close and extraordinarily sacred for them. Now, another thing about the famous example of adopting it was children or adults in this case was the Kal Skirata. He was the original Mandalorian trainer who was invited to Kamino to train the clone army of GAR, basically the Grand Army of Republic, into the shape it is. Now the Null Arc Commando clones and the Omega's Commando Squad were famously adopted by Kal Skirata to the Skirata clan, and it was that his influence within the Mandalorians and the clones were substantial. I will go through his stories when I'm talking about the Omega Commando squad, as well as this his stories surrounding him in those Clone Wars era. Now, a Mandalorian child will eighth of his eighth birthday, he would go with their parents. Of either father or mother, and go through the 5-year mandatory military training all Mandalorians expected to have. And when their mandatory military training has been seemed worthy, and they pass their final training, final test, which tests their physical, martial, and mental fortitude, then they will be declared adults at the age of 13. Then they will be as a full Mandalorian as they could be. By 16, they're eligible for marriage. I did forget to say that. Now, another cheeky thing the Mandalorians also believe in is that they have a saying. Actually, before that saying, I do need to say the importance of a Mandalorian armor. Now, Beskar Iron Skin, literally translated from Mandoa, is usually made out of, it's a hereditary kind of thing. His significance is extraordinarily. As Din Djarin in TV show would show, it is a Beskar in his case, but which is going to be extraordinarily rare usually. But a lot of there are some armor is made for plasteel and stuff like that. But Mandalorian armor is almost hereditary. When their father and mother has been slain on battlefields, their children is expected to find them and then don their armor as their parents would have. If they are new Mandalorians, you'll be forged a new Beskar as accordingly. Now, as you say, was it very well represented in the TV series Mandalorian? You would see Din Djarin getting offended by the fact that a non-Mandalorian is wearing his Mandalorian armor. That's an accurate assessment of how an actual Mandalorian would react to some foreigner who is not even a Mandalore, doesn't even abide by the code to see some some random motherfucker just having their sacred armor. That is an offense to them, and it is done very, very well to represent it. Now, of course, Mandalorian armor painting schemes usually have a lot of meanings to it. If it's gold, usually it means that I'm finding vengeance. And if it's painted black, it means that I'm finding justice. But it doesn't have to be always that meaning. They can always go for green or blue, as the Death Watch or the Protectors or used to do. But of course, if you think about green camos in a normal world, now that doesn't sound so tactical in terms of camouflage stance. Now, they have a very cheeky saying when it comes to that. It's one thing to see us coming. It's another to do something about it. Now, the Mandalorians is also famous, like the Spartans, with their, well, short phrases and very snarky comments. Accurately so, considering how what they are as warriors are ferocious. Now, another interesting thing about their society is about their mercenary culture and their army culture. Now, the army culture was more before the Neo-Crusaders and the Pacifists came in, but it was the Neo-Crusader era. Now, the Mandalorians, ironically enough, now they are very highly they're warriors, meaning they're very, very individualistic. However, when they're in an army, to achieve the whole goal of the army itself, they will usually sacrifice their self-need, and they will fall in line and making this kind of non-rigid structure of high command, but they will form it by themselves. There's no official officers' roles. There's only one kind of thing of that, and that time was that the quality of Mandalorians were quite drastically low. I'll talk about that when talking about the Neo-Crusades. But the armor, the hierarchy itself, as because of this mentality of giving yourself up for the greaterment of your clan or your war party, the mercenary groups as well as the armies have performed exceptionally well within the field of battle, and they have known to be coordinating highly sophisticated battle plans when engaging in their wars. So these guys are known to be great warriors and good soldiers. Now, the part about them being mercs, after they were shattered several times in their major wars, most of the Mandalorians sell themselves for the highest bidder for being mercenaries. And mercenaries are mercenary works just to stay keep themselves alive. Now, when the Mandalorian Super Commando Codex was created by who was Justin Muriel, it was said that all Mandalorians who wish to be mercs need to be highly paid, obviously, but highly honorable and sticking to a code of conduct. This was very strictly reinforced. Thus, you would see a Mandalorian would never break a creed when you hire them. They're very reliable mercenaries, are very powerful mercenaries, and they are the most fearsome warriors that you could ever want in the face of battle or anything that is related to that. Now, that is basically it for the brief overview. Now, I do want to talk about the Mandalorian language just before we go. Now, Mandalorian language, the Mandoa, is an actual language. You can follow. You can check it out in Wikipedia, and the vowels. They're very simple languages, like as in say, two words combined together. It's a very simplistic word structures. I have described it terribly, but it is a very interesting aspect of the Mandalorian lore in itself. So please do check that out. They do actually have quite an extensive vocabulary list you can do. It is fascinating to see. Now that is out of the way, I'll be finishing up the video for now. That is the general overview of the Mandalorians, and I hope you guys got some idea of who the Mandalorians are, what they are, what kind of culture they are, and what kind of ferocity they possess in terms of fear, power, death. They are prior traditions of their warrior culture. Thank you very much for coming. I was Kagaizi. I hope to see you in the next lore video. Goodbye.